The views expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of this station.
Welcome to Insights into Northeast Michigan, a WBKB News public affairs program. Insights deals with the issues affecting those in the community, as well as Northeast Michigan and the state. And now, Insights into Northeast Michigan.
Welcome everyone to this edition of Insights. Today we're talking about the Affordable Care Act, and the Alpena Chamber of Commerce put on a 5-part series that we're going to talk a little bit more about. And Ashley DeFisher is here with me, joining me. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
And so I wanted to just start right off the bat by asking you why you guys decided to host this series.
We do a lot of different activities, different programs, and this one was because the ACA is such a big, it's going to impact so many businesses.
Right.
And we've had a few people, by talking to people, we've had a few people say, oh, well, I haven't even started researching. I have no idea what's going to happen with this. So we wanted to bring it to Alpena and offer it to everyone in the community to have kind of an understanding a little more about the ACA, to maybe guide them through it and hopefully learn some stuff from our sessions that we provided.
Okay, and so 5-part series, what do you guys entail in all the different series?
Yes, we had a 5-part series. The first series was the first session was kind of an overview and the impact part of it.
Okay.
And then the second one was of agents and insurance providers, and we actually had 4 people on a panel, and we kind of just went over questions and maybe how it was going to affect them. And then we had other part, the third session was pharmacists and providers. So we had 3 or 4 people on that panel as well, and that one was set up as questions as well.
Okay.
The 4th session was the enforcement part, and this is kind of yes, the very, very important part of it. And that one went really good. I think with that one, a lot of people came to it and they're like, wow, there's a lot more than what I really thought there was going to be.
Right.
And then the last session, which was our 5th session, was kind of an overview. And we basically touched base on maybe some questions that came up in the other sessions that weren't able to be answered. Or maybe some questions that came up a few times that people just really weren't getting. So we just basically took from the different sessions what we came up with and made questions out of those so that we could ask those questions again and then get answers from them.
Okay, great. And what did you find that most people may have not realized before? I know it's a large piece of information and a huge document, and so I know this is new for everybody, but what were some common issues that people were concerned with?
That is a very tough question, just because basically the whole series was very informative for everyone.
Okay.
A lot of businesses kind of came into this not knowing, not even thought about even researching the whole idea.
Right.
So I think coming into this, they just really got a better insight of how the whole thing is going to unfold. Like maybe some records that they should start keeping for it. Just little different things like that, or maybe what they should be doing now, and or what they should have already have done.
Okay.
And it was just a great learning experience for everyone to kind of teach that to them.
Okay, and being a part of the chamber, who were you directing this towards? Was it for employees and employers, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Both.
Okay.
A lot of people think that the whole ACA is not going to affect them, but whether people like it or not, the ACA is going to happen, and it's eventually going to affect everyone, and it kind of will affect everyone. Right now, a lot more of the bigger businesses, only because with the 50 plus, they have fees and stuff like that if they don't offer the insurance.
Right.
But It also kind of affects the smaller businesses as well, because those employees that they have, they don't have to offer them insurance, but those employees have to go and get insurance from somewhere. So it's still impacting everyone in some way and form.
Okay. And so how was the turnout this year? Because I know this is the first time you guys have obviously held the session, and you guys didn't know what to expect exactly.
Yes,
so.
when we kind of had the idea about putting this whole series together, we really had no idea how the turnout was going to be. And so the first session was kind of our guinea pig, I guess you could say. And so from each of the sessions, we basically kind of averaged probably about 60 each session, which was great. I know we even had a comment from one of our speakers because Foster, Swift & Collins, PC, out of Grand Rapids, they actually sent, there was 3 different speakers from their firm that actually came and talked with us and kind of for the different pieces of it.
Yeah, great.
So they actually made a comment and said, this is the biggest group I've ever had about teaching the ACA, which is very good to hear, especially from them coming from Grand Rapids and being in a bigger area.
Okay. And is it something the Chamber felt that would impact so many business here locally? Because I know we have a lot of small and larger businesses here in Alpena that are local to the county of Alpena. Is that another influential factor that you guys took into consideration?
Yes, we knew that the ACA is going to affect pretty much, I mean, the bigger businesses, yes, but the smaller businesses, it could. So it was just basically to kind of throw ideas out there so that they know what steps to take now or where they can find resources to learn more information on it. Okay.
And I know you guys were kind of tossing around the idea of having another seminar sometime in the future. Is that still a possibility, or?
We haven't really talked about it since our last session, and our last session actually was just this Wednesday. And we haven't really talked about it anymore. When we originally came up with the idea, we said, yeah, possibly, maybe. With the ACA, it's changing every day. So if we feel the need that we have to, or that we should, just to inform people on some of the stuff that is coming up with, newer things that's coming up with it, we will. But as of right now, we have nothing planned.
Okay. And what do you hope that individuals will take away from these 5 sessions?
Just extra information. Basically, like I said before, some of them coming into this had no idea what to expect.
Right.
And the Chamber is just very, very happy that we were able to provide such great information and provide such great speakers for the sessions.
Definitely. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and giving me a little insight about the Chamber's responsibility in hosting the sessions. So I want to thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, coming up after the break, we'll talk to the moderator of the 5 sessions, and he'll tell us the importance of staying informed on these issues. Welcome back, everyone, to Insights. Dave Sidlowski joins us now, and he was the moderator at the Affordable Care Act series. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invite.
Of course. And can you tell me a little bit about your decision on choosing to participate in the series?
I ask myself that same question. For those who are familiar about the Affordable Care Act, it is a very, very complex piece of legislation. And myself, as a director of a local employer, we were impacted by the size of our organization and the requirement to provide affordable health care for our employees. So I began researching and studying the legislation when it was first introduced back in March of 2010. Like many individuals and business owners, this piece of legislation has not really been placed into force yet with enforcement, and so we're hoping it goes away, but it's not going to go away. It's in front of us, and it's going to be here. So as we sat at a round table at the Chamber of Commerce office to make a decision as to how we're going to roll out this series for the benefit of the local businesses, I seem to have the most experience, just based on the time I spent studying the legislation.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about your intent behind becoming the facilitator?
My role was to try to guide the whole process through the series, working with the panelists who were hopefully going to provide us the answers that we were all looking for, especially with the piece of legislation being over 2,000 pages long. You know, we had a very short time frame to fit this into. You know, the people in attendance were local business owners, and time is important for them.
Okay. And so there was a 5-part series. And so what was the whole intent behind the series, and how did you guys kind of divide up the different sessions?
Well, we decided it was best to break it down because of the complexity. And with the breakdown, we wanted to provide a general overview of the legislation, the Affordable Care Act. A lot of information for people to grasp.
Definitely.
And then we broke it down into bringing in various stakeholders. The first stakeholders were the insurance providers, because they were going to receive the first bullet from all of their customers as to what's insurance going to cost me and what are my responsibilities.
Right.
And then the second providers that we brought in were the health providers. And all healthcare industry providers. We talked to our panelists from the hospital, local pharmacy, and also the community mental health.
Okay.
Then another stakeholder that we brought in was a piece for enforcement. Who's going to enforce this legislation, throughout the nation?
Right.
We attempted to identify somebody from the IRS, but ended up working with a company out of the Lansing area who has experience in tax law.
Okay. And how do you hope all these sessions help people, and what do you hope that they'll take away from this?
Hopefully collaboration. Since it is brand new, I'm learning. I'm not the expert. I was chosen to moderate the series, but even I learned many aspects of the Act at each session. We don't expect everybody will grasp the whole piece of legislation. There's nothing that is a canned program for businesses to draw from, but basically to prepare themselves for what they need to do. This act actually came into effect in March of 2010, and as the program rolls out, we have some safe harbor periods that we're allowed to work within, and hopefully we'll be able to adjust our businesses in order to comply.
Okay. And what are some key changes that both employees and employers need to plan for?
Well, we need to be able to plan for costs. That's the bottom line for everybody. For many organizations, the costs are going to go up, we're told, anywhere from 20 to 40%, for group health insurances. As far as for individuals, if they are provided or offered health coverage, through their employer, and they elect to turn it down, then they could receive a penalty, and that penalty in the form of in your income tax reporting at the end of the year.
Okay. And so what was the most common questions that you were asked? Because as we know, the last series, you guys opened it up for discussion. And so what were some common thread questions that you guys were getting?
Oh, they were pretty consistent from session to session. And again, depending on the individual's business, the more important questions were, when do I need to comply by? October 1 is one of those dates as far as informing employees about the programs that are available out on the federal exchange. How much is it going to cost me? Two of our local insurance executives participated in 2 sessions, and they shared with us that just recently, in the past week actually, that they were informed of what the programs were potentially going to cost. And of course, everybody in the audience wanted to know, when are we as employers going to find out what that value will be?
Right.
And so those are the important ones, compliance, what's it going to cost me, and what do I need to do for reporting purposes?
Okay.
The reporting purposes are, or requirements I should say, are somewhat complex. They are 3 measurement periods that employers will have to monitor each employee by to see if they qualify or not for coverage. If an employer errs in providing or offering coverage in time, then they have potential of receiving a penalty.
Okay. And were all these questions everything that was answered throughout the session?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they were.
Okay. And is there anything else that you hope that people will kind of take away from this?
Well, we hope everybody looked around the room to see who their neighbors were, because we are all in this together. And again, I go back to and I repeat, this is brand new, so we're all learning. If we think back to when Medicare was first introduced, you know, one of the first major social health systems that was introduced,
right,
you know, to the nation, there was a lot of getting used to, you know, to the program.
Okay.
So that's what we're hoping. We're hoping we all work together. We're working with our accountants, our attorneys, to make sure that we do comply and avoid penalties and do what's best for, you know, our employees.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, when we return, we'll talk to an insurance agency who tells us a little bit more about how employees and employers are going to be affected. Welcome back, everyone. And now Bob Grahowski from the Lappin Agency is joining me today to talk about the different series that you talked about on the Affordable Care Act. And we were just talking a little bit earlier, and you told me the biggest thing that people need to realize is the difference between small and large businesses. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes. Today, a lot of businesses consider themselves small businesses because they really don't think about their part-time employees. Under the Affordable Care Act, the government looks at, number one, a full-time employee is an employee that works 30 hours or more. But when they're defining large versus small group, they're talking about 50 or less full-time equivalents is what they're calling it, is a small employer. Over 50 is a large employer. And it's pretty, I think, cut and dry on who's full-time with most employers. Whether it be 30, 35, 37 and a half, or 40 hours, those are full-time. But they really don't consider their part-time people, and without getting into all these formulas they have for calculating that, essentially if you have two 15-hour employees, you have another full-time equivalent.
Okay.
So you could have a small number of true full-time employees and a large number of full-time or part-time equivalents when you go through the formula, and all of a sudden you're a large employer where you thought you were a small employer before.
And how does that affect businesses that, like you said, consider themselves small businesses, but in actuality, with this new healthcare reform, will be considered larger businesses?
Well, if they're still a small business in the sense of they may be over 50 full-time equivalents, but they have less than 50 full-time employees. From that standpoint, they're not going to be subject to a lot of different things, because as far as their full-time employer, they have to offer health insurance, but they only have to offer it to their full-time employees. If they're larger than 50, they have to, with a greater number than 50 full-time employees, they're going to have to offer that to those full-time employees, or they could not offer it. But as a large group, more than 50 full-time equivalents, they are subject to what the government is calling shared responsibility, or a penalty, if they don't offer health insurance and employees go out and purchase health insurance through the federal marketplaces where they may be eligible for a subsidy. The true small employer with less than 50 full-time equivalents will not be subject to those penalties. So, they have a little more flexibility under the ACA.
Okay, and what would those penalties be for large businesses if their employees do decide to seek health insurance elsewhere?
Well, for simplistic sake, the penalty for a large employer that doesn't offer health insurance and their employees went out and purchased health insurance through one of the exchanges is essentially $2,000 per full-time employee, less 30. You subtract 30 from that.
Okay.
So for some employers, the penalty actually won't be that large. But I think it gets into, one of the big things I think any employer, small or large, is going to have to look at is what is their value proposition. you know, what brought my employees to me?
Exactly.
And what part of that was benefits? Because there are a lot of people in the workplace today that what attracts them to their employer is the fact that there is benefits. They do get health insurance.
Right.
So that's a critical thing to a lot of people that are in the workplace today.
And so without those benefits, are we seeing a lot of employees leave those businesses, or are they still sticking around and getting insurance elsewhere?
From the number of companies I work with, just in this area, but you know, I reach out further than Alpena. There are people leaving companies for better benefits. It's not totally pay. It's even the younger people now are starting to be concerned with benefits, more so than they were years ago.
Right. And so, what's an employee's responsibility in all of this?
Well, I think as an employee, and we're getting, I think, dropping into what's called the individual mandate, is if there are a lot of people out there today that don't have health insurance. One reason might be their employer doesn't offer it. Another reason is they can't afford it. Or there are a high percentage of people out there, believe it or not, that can afford to buy health insurance but don't have it because they don't want to have it. With health reform starting in 2014, there is an individual mandate that, you know, the government wants you to have health insurance.
Right.
Now, along with there being a shared responsibility for employers that don't offer it, on an individual basis, there is a penalty for not having health insurance starting in 2014. It won't be reported until your taxes are done in 2015 for 2014, but the initial penalty is a very small penalty. And there's a lot of concern over that it's not that big of a penalty. Why should people buy health insurance for what the penalty is? But if you look at the first year, it's like $90 for an individual. It goes up to $3-something the second year and almost $700 the third year. You get into the third year, you're starting to talk real money when you're talking a family of 3, a family of 4, and depending on their income level, going out to a federal marketplace where they may get a subsidy, that penalty may be close to what they might have to pay for that health insurance to have it.
Right, right. And so what is the best option really for employees to do going forward?
Well, hopefully for most, their employer will be offering them health insurance. I personally really feel that that may be the most affordable way for many employees to get health insurance, because although, you know, we're talking a federal marketplace, which is in the works, it's not out there yet.
Right.
People, depending on income, where they fall in the federal poverty level, can get assistance, or what the premium cost share, they'll pay less than the full premium. But still, that range that they will have to pay, if they're over 100% of the federal poverty level up to 400% of the federal poverty level, ranges from 0% to 9.5% of their household income. And that 9.5% actually kicks in at 300% of the federal poverty level. So if you do the math of, even though I qualify for this assistance, if I'm around 8 or 9% of my household income, my share could be pretty significant. You know, when you start looking at, this is coming out of someone's take-home pay. You know, it might be $60 a week, $70 a week, $80 a week that they haven't been paying previously. I kind of look at it, someone that didn't have health insurance before, and they might be able to get it for, say, $30 a week as an example. If they didn't have it before for $30 a week because they couldn't afford it, what will make it more affordable now to spend the $30 a week? The only thing is now that if they don't get it, they will have a penalty. But like I said, the penalty the first year isn't that bad. Right. But it does go up to where it starts to count down the road.
Exactly, exactly. And so what do you hope that the people that attended your session will take away from it?
I think, I really hope they'll take a serious look at their business. The people that attended it were primarily small business and large business. And I really hope they'll evaluate, you know, what's the value of the benefits to my employees. And it's going to be an economic decision for a business.
Absolutely.
Can we afford going forward to provide this benefit? You know, quite frankly, for some businesses under health reform, the cost is going to go up because there's going to, starting January 1st, 2014, there's going to be some new taxes that are going to be assessed. And you know, it's going to be more for small groups, and than it would be for a large group, but still, it's going to be an extra cost that wasn't there, and that starts January 1st. So, you know, that's an automatic impact on my budget. You know, and that could range anywhere. The numbers I'm hearing from some of the carriers that I work with might be a low of 3% to a high of 6%, depending on, you know, the type of benefit you have, the type of group you are, you know, your group size, that type of thing, and the type of plan you're on.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me and providing your services, really, to explain to the community how this new health reform is going to impact both employees and employers. So I want to thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you. I was privileged to be here.
All right. Well, that will do it for this edition of Insights. You can catch us back here at 11 a.m. next Sunday.
Insights into Northeast Michigan is produced by WBKB News. If you have any comments, suggestions, or topics you would like to see on a future show, please email WBKB News. This has been a production of Thunder Bay Broadcasting Corporation. All rights reserved.